Hey guys, it's Brianna, and we are going to talk about books. First, let me address the fact that I am not in my normal bedroom. I am actually shooting this at my parents' house, so I'm in a different bedroom in case you're wondering why it looks like the background is different. That's because it is. So if the lighting is a little bit weird, I apologize. I did my best. Let's jump right into it. We are going to talk about everything that I read in the month of February, and surprisingly, I was able to read 5 books this month, even though it is a short month. I am really trucking along towards my reading goal, and with that being said, I started this month off with The Shining by Stephen King. Honestly, I'm surprised that I haven't already read this book because I have read so many Stephen King novels, and this is like one of his most popular books ever, and I just hadn't ever gotten around to reading it, but I finally got my hands on it and read it. This book was originally published in 1977. It is 659 pages, or at least this version is 659 pages. And I will read you the summary. Jack Torrance's new job at the Overlook Hotel is the perfect chance for a fresh start. As the off-season caretaker at the atmospheric old hotel, he'll have plenty of time to spend reconnecting with his family and working on his writing. But as the harsh winter weather sets in, the idyllic location feels ever more remote and more sinister. And the only one to notice the strange and terrible forces gathering around the Overlook is Danny Torrance, a uniquely gifted 5-year-old. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It is very clear why this is one of his most popular novels. It was really, really great, and it's quintessential Stephen King. You get the creep factor, you get horror, you get like a remote location, you get a little bit of mental insanity. You get it all. You get gory stuff as well. This book just really delivers on, the creepy factor. So if you're really into horror type books, I would definitely say check this out. If you're not into horror, you definitely don't want to read this because it's not the type of Stephen King novel where you can get away with reading it even if you're not too into the creepy stuff. This is definitely one of his scarier books, so I would say don't check this out if you're not a fan of horror. I did dock this down 1 star, and it is the usual criticism that I have for Stephen King books. It's just so long, and I didn't feel like it needed to be that long. There were definitely a few chapters or places where he went really deep in the description, and I didn't feel like some of that stuff was necessary. So I think this probably could have been shortened down, but other than that, it's a really great read. Like I said, if you're into horror stuff, or if you're a fan of Stephen King and you somehow haven't read this yet, like me, you should check this one out. The next book that I read is another Stephen King book, and it's called Just After Sunset, but this one is a little bit different because it's actually a collection of his short stories. This was published in 2008. It is 367 pages. I don't think me reading the description or like the summary of this would do you much good because it basically just gives like a 1-line description of every single short story in here, and I don't think that's really necessary, but I will let you know that I enjoyed every single story in here except for one, which is why I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. There were definitely some that I enjoyed more than others. There was one story that I kind of wish wasn't included in here. I just didn't enjoy it. The one that I was not a fan of is called Stationary Bike. I just didn't really connect to that one at all. I didn't find the lead character, very likable in that story, and I just could have done without it. But all the other stories are ones that I'm glad I read. I would say my favorites have to be Willa, Rest Stop, N, and The Cat from Hell. I would recommend this to anyone who is a fan of Stephen King and also anyone who is looking for something to get them back into reading, because I find that sometimes when I'm in a reading slump, it's nice to break it up with some short stories so you don't feel like you're kind of stuck with one book. And you could even read a short story or two and then read something else and then come back to this later. So I enjoyed that a lot. If anyone reads this or any of the stories out of it, let me know what your favorites are. The next book that I read is Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. It was published in 2019, so more of a recently published novel. It is only 196 pages, so definitely a shorter read. So if you like short reads, definitely check this out. I will read you the summary. 2 families from different social classes are joined together by an unexpected pregnancy and the child that it produces. Moving forward and backward in time with the power of poetry and the emotional richness of a narrative 10 times its length, Jacqueline Woodson's extraordinary new novel uncovers the role that history and community have played in the experiences, decisions, and relationships of these families and in the life of this child. As the book opens in 2001, it is the evening of 16-year-old Melody's coming-of-age ceremony in her grandparents' Brooklyn brownstone. Watched lovingly by her relatives and friends making her entrance to the soundtrack of Prince, she wears a special custom-made dress. But the event is not without poignancy. I don't know if I said that right. 16 years earlier, that very dress was measured and sewn for a different wearer, Melody's mother, for her own ceremony, a celebration that ultimately never took place. Unfurling the history of Melody's parents and grandparents to show how they all arrived at this moment, Woodson considers not just their ambitions and successes, but also the costs, the tolls they've paid for striving to overcome expectations and escape the pull of history. As it explores sexual desire and identity, ambition, gentrification, education, class, and status, and the life-altering facts of parenthood read at the bone, most strikingly looks at the ways in which young people must so often make long-lasting decisions about their lives, even before they have begun to figure out who they are and what they want to be. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This is my favorite book that I read this entire month. It is super short, so I read it super quickly, and I feel like it's unlike anything that I've read before, mostly because I would say it doesn't have a super clear plot line, but it does a really good job of kind of taking one moment and then using that moment to tell a whole history. And I thought that was really interesting, and it's a format that I've not come across very often. And Jacqueline Woodson did it very, very well, so I'm definitely going to be checking out more of her books in the future. I would really recommend this to anyone, but especially to people who are looking for a short read, people who like a poetic style of writing, and anybody who is looking for books about the Black experience. The next book that I read is Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas, and if you remember from my past videos, you would know that I read The Hate You Give, which is the original book, and then this is the prequel to that book. And this was actually published in 2021, so this book pretty much just came out. It is 360 pages, so a great length in my opinion, and I will read you the summary. If there's one thing 17-year-old Maverick Carter knows, it's that a real man takes care of his family. As the son of a former gang legend, Mav does that the only way he knows how, dealing for the King Lords. With this money, he can help his mom, who works 2 jobs while his dad's in prison. Life's not perfect, but with a fly girlfriend and a cousin who always has his back, Mav's got everything under control. Until, that is, Maverick finds out he's a father. Suddenly, he has a baby, 7, who depends on him for everything. But it's not so easy to sling dope, finish school, and raise a child, so when he's offered the chance to go straight, he takes it. In a world where he's expected to amount to nothing, maybe Mav can prove he's different. When King Lord blood runs through your veins, though, you can't just walk away. Loyalty, revenge, and responsibility threaten to tear Mav apart, especially after the brutal murder of a loved one. He'll have to figure out for himself what it really means to be a man. International phenomenon Angie Thomas revisits Garden Heights 17 years before the events of The Hate You Give in this searing and poignant exploration of Black boyhood and manhood. There's that word again. Poignant? Poignant? One of those. I really enjoyed this book, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and the only reason I docked it down 1 star was the same reason I docked down The Hate You Give 1 star, and that was that I felt like the narration in here, because it is narrated by the main character Maverick, I felt like the narration was a little bit juvenile, and I don't know if that's because I think this leans more towards like a YA audience, or if it was just the way that the character speaks. Either way, I didn't really like it too much in The Hate You Give, and in this I also found it kind of confusing to read. In some instances I understood it. I think it made sense to write the book in the way that he would speak, because it gives you a little bit more insight into his life. But in other instances, I felt like it was just kind of confusing to try to read the way that he speaks. So definitely keep that in mind if you're going to read this. But overall, I really love this book. I think it gave some great context for The Hate You Give, because Maverick is the father of the main character in that book. And I just think that Angie Thomas knows how to write a really good story. Like the summary mentioned, this book is all about Black boyhood and manhood, and fatherhood as well. So if that's a topic you're interested in, I would definitely check this out. And if you've read The Hate You Give, you should definitely read this as well. And the final book that I read this month was With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is not the first book that I've read by her. I previously read Clap When You Land, and I loved that book, so I figured I would give this one a try. This was published in 2019. It is 388 pages, so great length. Ever since she got pregnant freshman year, Imani Santiago's life has been about making the tough decisions, doing what has to be done for her daughter and her abuela. The one place she can let all that go is in the kitchen. There, she lets her hands tell her what to cook, listening to her intuition and adding a little something magical every time, turning her food into straight-up goodness. Even though she's always dreamed of working in a kitchen after she graduates, Imani knows that it's not worth her time to pursue the impossible. Yet despite the rules she's made for her life, and everyone else's rules which she refuses to play by, once Imani starts cooking, her only choice is to let her talent break free. From the author of National Book Award winner The Poet X comes a dazzling story of a girl with talent, pride, and a drive to create that keeps her fire burning bright. I really enjoyed this one as well. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I definitely preferred Clap When You Land to this book, so if you're going to read any book by her, I would definitely check out Clap When You Land first. I think this one leaned a little bit more YA than the other one did, so keep that in mind. This is definitely meant for a little bit more of a younger audience than the other book was, which is I think why I didn't connect with it as much. I also wasn't really expecting there to be this like romantic subplot. I didn't mind it, but I did feel like the story maybe would have been better without it, or if it were less of a focus, if that makes sense. But overall, it was a really great story about a girl who just loves to cook. I would definitely recommend this book to anybody who likes food, anyone who likes books with romance involved, definitely to younger audiences. Also, anyone who likes stories that center around young motherhood, because the main character in this book is a young mother. And even anybody who maybe knows a little bit of Spanish, because there's some Spanish terms sprinkled around in this book. For example, she calls her grandmother abuela. You definitely don't need to know Spanish to read this, but if you do know a little bit of Spanish, it is nice to have it sprinkled throughout in here. If you don't know Spanish, you'll probably be able to figure out what they're saying just by context clues, or you can just do a quick Google search, but it's not too often that you come across a word that's a little bit more confusing to figure out. I also just have to mention that I really love that all of Elizabeth Acevedo's books, the cover, when you take the cover off of the hardcover book, I find that most books are kind of boring. It's just like a plain color on the inside, but hers are like so pretty. My bookmark just fell out, in case you noticed. Like, look at how pretty this is. I just love it. I mean, most other books are so boring, but this one has like a nice pattern. The other book had a similar thing going on too, so just a little touch that I like, because I always end up taking the covers off when I'm reading them because they end up bothering me, and this is nice. It's not just like a boring plain book. If you're wondering why I'm looking to the side, I'm looking at the viewfinder just so I can see that you're actually seeing this. And that is going to do it for the month of February. The book that I'm reading next is Dr. Sleep by Stephen King, so a nice follow-up to The Shining this month. Make sure you leave a comment below and let me know what books you've read recently so that I can check them out, and if you've read any of the books in this video, let me know what you thought of them as well. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Make sure you like the video, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!